and welcome back. This is Ethelred, the worst Civ player on YouTube. Let's play some Civ. Alright, so when I was picking the civilization that I was going to play through next, I asked myself, which one would I enjoy taking a couple of weeks to study? And it occurred to me that as an ignorant American, I didn't know if the good folk living on the British island were British or English. I mean, my ignorance is profound, honestly, when it comes to British history. So I decided to go ahead and play Britain and, well, England, and to become familiar with their history. So I'll learn the history as we play through. I'll share it with you, and hopefully we can all have a jolly good time together. You'll notice right now that I've got a mod enabled, which is the Yet Not Another Earth Map Pack mod, and that simply enables us to play on the Earth map. It also has something called TSL, which is True Starting Location, which means that we as England will be starting in England. Well, Britain. Yes, well, that has quite a bit of bearing, actually, on the early game here. So you'll see also that I have 10 civilizations enabled. I've previously done 12 in my other playthroughs. I went with 10 simply to cut myself a break. If you've watched the other series, you'll notice I've never won any of them. It was up against 12 civilizations in each case, and in all cases, including this one, I have gone for a domination win. By reducing the number of AIs, that means I have 2 fewer capitals that I need to conquer in order to win. So that's good. The other thing is that the map type is Giant Earth. This is a huge map, and having 10 civilizations rather than 12 means that I have 2 fewer capitals that I need to drive my tanks to. Difficulty level is Emperor, as always. Have not yet beat it. I have never beat Emperor. Hopefully this will be the first time. Game pace is Epic, as always. And all the victory types are enabled. I do have one interesting option enabled down here, which is no ancient ruins. And that's because I know I'm on an island. I probably, therefore, will not be able to get any ancient ruins. And if I can't get ancient ruins, nobody can. Screw the AI. Those guys suck. I hate the AI. So no ancient ruins. Quick combat and quick movement are enabled as always. The other mods are the red mod pack, which is a reskinning of the units. It's got no gameplay changes. And also the faster aircraft animations. In case I turn quick combat off, the bombers will move a little faster. The last thing I have installed is not a mod, it's the extended user interface. That gives me a little bit more information in my tooltips, and I will provide links to all of these in the descriptions below. So before I click start game, I want to go through a little bit of prehistory with you guys, if you give me a few moments. And that is the first question that occurred to me when I decided to go with England was, how did people get onto the island of Britain anyway? Well, as it turns out, it didn't used to be an island. It used to be connected to both Ireland and to the continent by a land bridge called the Doggerland. And people simply walked across. The first signs of human habitation were, according to some sources, 40,000 years ago, some other sources 35,000 years ago, on Britain. Now, they lived there for a period of time until glaciers came down from the north and we had a bit of an ice age. And at this time, everyone living in Britain and Ireland either had to leave or die. Those glaciers covered the island for about 10,000 years. And in 13,000 BC, they began to retreat. Temperatures continued to warm, and around 9600 BC, the island was warm enough that people could inhabit it again. And they did. They walked right across the Doggerland, and they inhabited Britain, and they inhabited Ireland. Now, these glaciers, they didn't stop melting. They kept melting. So around 9000 BC, the rising sea levels cut off Ireland from Britain, and those people who had been on the Ireland hill as compared to the British hill realized, oh, we're not on a hill anymore, we're on an island. So Ireland became separated. Around 5600 BC, the rising sea levels flooded the rest of the Doggerland, and there was no retreat back to the mainland continent. And those on the British hill, excuse me if I just say, one hill here, one hill there, etc., I'm simply just simplifying the equation here. Those who were on the British island realized, oh, we are on an island now, and there is no retreat back to the continent. So, who were these people? Who were the people on the continent side of the Doggerland? Who were the people on the British island side of the Doggerland? And who were the people who were in Ireland? These were all one culture. They were the Celts. And so they all shared a common ancestral language. I mean, the language evolved and changed as they became separated from one another, but the root language was the same. And the core cultural beliefs were all the same. It was an oral tradition culture. It did not stress writing like some other parts of the world, such as Babylon and China, etc. So these people, the continent dwellers, and also the British and the Irish and the Scottish, they were all Celts by descent. Okay, so that brings us up to 4000 BC. I feel I'm forgetting something about the Celts. Anyway, we'll move on. I will mention one more thing, 4000 BC, because I won't remember once I get in game, is that the Neolithic Revolution came to Britain in 4000 BC. What's the Neolithic Revolution? That is the farming revolution. That is the realization we can plant cereal crops, and we can make wheat, and we can make bread, and we can have a cheap source of calories, and we can grow our village much greater than we ever have been before. This brings me to the first point where I say, meanwhile in Mesopotamia. So excuse me that I will be doing this several times over the course of the next few thousand years. Meanwhile in Mesopotamia, the Neolithic Revolution had arrived in 10,000 BC. That's 6,000 years before it came to the British island. And I'm pointing this out not to disparage the good folk of the British Islands. After all, Britain was covered in a glacier, and Mesopotamia wasn't. That's a big deal. That's everything in this equation. All right? And the reason why I'm going to go back to this a couple of times is, one, to give you a little context. And the other reason is to feed back into the Babylonian playthrough that we just did, where I kept talking about Babylon as a scientific civilization. In this game, they have scientific bonuses. Why? It's because they were 6,000 years ahead of places like the British Island. And that's because of the advantages of where they were. They didn't have to deal with a glacier. And they had the opportunity to develop writing and farming and things like this, while here in Britain, there was a glacier. Okay, so all of that said and done, I'm going to click Start Game. The narrator's going to say a bunch of things we've all heard before. I'm going to cut him off as soon as I can. We're going to find out if we have a good starting location. And then I'm going to take a turn 0 save, so that if you would like to play along with me, you can. I'm going to upload that save to Dropbox. I'm going to put that in the description. And if you want to play the same scenario, you can. All right, here we go. I hope we get a good starting location. A luxury would be great.
Praises upon Her Serene Highness, Queen Elizabeth Gloriana. You lead and protect the celebrated maritime nation of England. England is an ancient land. Settled as early as 35,000 years ago, the island has seen countless waves of invaders, each in turn becoming a part of the fabric of the people. Although England is a small island, for many years your...
Yes, enough. Okay, no luxuries. That stinks. Save game. Yes. And here we go. All right. we have a number of short and long-term strategic goals, and it's going to be a very unorthodox playthrough because, after all, I'm on an island and there are no ancient ruins. So you notice I just made a bunch of unusual choices. First place, I don't need a scout. I'm on an island. I can't get off the island. I don't have optics. So I'm just going to send my one worker to go scout the situation out. And I hope to heavens that the Celts aren't here, because if they are, that will greatly complicate things. I can't imagine how I'm going to deal with the Celts if they're here with me. This map pack, the TSL, has one other civilization on this island, and that's the Celts. And I really don't want to go to war in the ancient era. But it looks like we're now up in Scotland here, and there's no Celts. There's barbarians. Fine. Barbarians I can deal with. Celts I can't. So we'll leave those barbarians alone. The next thing is you'll notice that I went with a worker rather than the scout. That's because there's no reason for me to scout anything. And I'm not working on a monument either. That's because I'm going to go tradition. I understand there are many difficulties with the Liberty playthrough. I'm not going to try for Liberty. I'm going to go with good old tradition, and that means that with legalism, I'm going to get a monument for free anyway. So why would I put hammers into it? You probably know of some good reasons. If you do, let me know. But anyway, I don't know them right now, so I'm going to go with a worker. And as soon as I get pottery, I'm going to actually switch over to shrine. That will bank all of the turns that I've spent on this worker, but I'm not going to finish the worker. So we're going to switch now to a shrine. Okay. So we've got a shrine coming. We're working on writing. Our next goal will be a library. Short, medium, and long-term strategic goals. Well, the first one is satisfied. Explore to find if the Celts are on the island with us. They aren't. Thank goodness. The next one is to have a strong religion. I plan on having a strong religion for one particular reason. Allow me to show you. The rationalism ending here says that you may purchase great scientists with faith, starting in the industrial era. So I plan to, part of my playthrough here, I'm just going to accumulate a ton of faith, and I'm going to buy scientists starting in the industrial era. So that's part of this. So I need a strong faith, and since I don't have any resources here which will help with the faith pantheon, I'm going to get Stonehenge. So I'm going to be rushing Stonehenge. I'm not going to try for the Great Library. Even on Emperor, I've never had any success getting Great Library, or if I have, it's been so long I don't remember. I'm just going to let the AIs get that. Yeah, full stop. So, okay, we have explored the island of Britain. Fantastic. Now we need to start meeting other civilizations. Next strategic goals. I need to control the English Channel, which means that I'm going to try to buy tiles here to ensure that I control this channel. And also, the overarching goal for everything. What was this? Dance of the Aurora. Okay, leave it to the AI to pick a really poor pantheon. I don't begrudge the loss of that pantheon at all. I need to get across to the continent. Absolutely. As soon as I possibly can. Before I build any military at all, I will be crossing to the continent to establish a bridgehead there. That will be my medium-term goal here. And then in the medieval eras, I will be conducting an aggressive militaristic policy, take out a couple of civs, and cement my control over Europe. And then, as soon as I can, probably sometime in the industrial era, I'm going to send an amphibious fleet to the Americas and try to set up a bridgehead there. So there's us taking the tradition opener. Now, we're still not going to finish this worker, because now we're going to switch over to the library. So here's our library. Okay. And the next thing that we're going to research is the calendar, so that we can get Stonehenge. So a lot of history has happened. It's already 1,000 years have passed. 3000 BC. Okay, so what's happened in the last 1,000 years? I accumulated 102 shiny things, apparently. In 3500, the first evidence of long barrows appeared in Britain. What is a long barrow? That is you can think of it two ways. You can think of it as a hollowed out hill in which they buried people, or you can think of it as, there we go, a burial mound. You just pile up a bunch of soil and, well, you hollow out the middle of it and you bury people in it. Okay, that's a long barrow. And it was long, right? Just long. That's why it's called a long barrow. What else? Oh, yes, causewayed enclosures begin to appear. And these things are really interesting hill forts. Basically, what they would do is, because they didn't really have stone working or iron working, and they couldn't build castles, but they were already starting to war with one another, what they did is they would go to a hill, and they would dig out huge trenches into the hill. So imagine a round hill with a trench dug all around the inside of it. Okay? Now what does that make the giant wall of soil that is the outside of the hill? Well, that makes it a wall. And you now have a road inside of that wall. And they would just dig concentric rings, right, into this hill so that they could go live inside this hill. It was open air, right? But they would have these concentric walls of soil, of compacted hill, right? And that would be their fortresses. So that were the causewayed enclosures. Let's see. Oh, yes. Also at this time, they started to build wooden trackways across these bogs. These bogs are fascinating. You should go look up a picture of them and imagine yourself standing in these bogs. Just looking at pictures on Google, I could almost feel... Okay, no, I'm not going to say this. I mean, you let your imagination get away with you, and you can really feel the presence of these bogs. They had a very spiritual connection to these people. Now, remember, the people here are British, but they are cut from a Celtic cloth, and they were very druidic in nature and had a very strong connection to the earth. So they saw these bogs as very quasi-spiritual places, also extremely dangerous places. If you had to get from point A to point B, and that meant crossing a bog, well, you were just as likely as not to die. So they started to make offerings to these bogs. You know, approaching these bogs, I will try to appease the bog spirits by throwing in some beads, and hopefully that will make the bog happy enough that I can get across. So they started doing that. What else? Let's see. Arrowheads and pottery appear at this time. In contrast, in Mesopotamia, they already had writing and were working on commerce. About 3000 BC, the first stone circles appear. As they developed their stone circle methods and technologies, they were eventually able to build Stonehenge, but we're not there yet. Okay, so back to the bogs. Now, these bogs, they have accumulated peat over the many thousands of years. Peat is basically compressed vegetable matter, and it makes for a fabulous fuel. And so it is, in present day, basically strip mined for fuel, and also the peat can be smoked for scotch. So there are industrial operations going on, stripping the peat off of these bogs, and every so once in a while they find bodies. And because of the particular acidity of these bogs, these bodies have been perfectly preserved for thousands of years. And what they're finding in some cases is that these bodies were not maybe just, whoops, I stumbled, I fell, I drowned. No, some of these bodies were murdered. And in fact, some of them were not murdered just once, they were thrice murdered. That is a... Now, I'm going to interrupt myself here and say I picked up aristocracy to help me build Stonehenge. Okay, next turn. Where was I? Yes, thrice murdered bog people. So the oral tradition is that the king of a people who represented... founding the pantheon. There is literally nothing... There are no luxury tiles for me to work. So I'm going to take God King and get one hammer right off the bat, along with the other bonuses there. Oh, wow, we are already out of time. That's 30 minutes. I'm going to finish the bog people, and we're going to cut this episode. So, these kings, they tied the people to the land, and if the crops failed, obviously that was a failure of the king. So the people would pull the king down and they would kill him, not just once. One's not enough to make up for whatever this king did wrong. One death is not enough. So they would do things like hang him whilst slitting his throat open and stabbing him in the heart. Now this poor wretch would be thrown into the bog as an offering. This jerk obviously did something to displease you. Speaking to the bog. So we're returning him to you. We done mutilated him good. We got the revenge. We're throwing him back to you now. This is our offering. Please, earth, be bountiful for us. This, I don't mention this just because it's interesting. I mention it because it's woven into this Druidic, Celtic, British, indigenous people here and the mythologies that they build with themselves over the next 1,000 or so years. Okay. I think I'm done here. So, if you like this video, or if you didn't like it, either way, there's buttons for that. Please go click those buttons. Likewise, if you would like to hear more videos like this one, where I ramble about history while absent-mindedly playing Civ and probably losing, please click the subscribe button. These buttons have a huge influence on whether or not this channel ever shows up in search results. It's really meaningful to me. And if you've got anything to say, please put it in the comments. I read all of them. It's such a small channel. I'll read all of them, and I respond to all of them. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen. I hope you have a great day.